Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Varadhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Varadhari Jasodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana Jasodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana Jamunatira Vonachari Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Varadhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Varadhari Jasodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana Jasodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana Jamunatira Vonachari Jamunatira Vonachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Varadhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Varadhari Jasodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana Jasodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana Amunatiya Vonachari Amunatiya Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Om Vishnupada Paramahansa Paribhajika Acharya Sotara Sri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
We're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Third canto, 15th chapter, 4th verse. Deva Deva, Jagat, Dhatur, Lokanatha, Sikamane, Paresham, Aparesham, Tvam, Bhutanam, Asi, Bhavavit, Deva Deva Jagatdatur, Lokanatha Sikamane, Paresham Aparesham Tvam, Bhutanam Asi Bhavavit, Deva Deva Jagatdatur, Lokanatha Shikamane, Paresham Aparesham Tvam, Bhutanam Asi Bhavavit, Deva Deva Jagatdatur, Lokanatha Shikamane, Paresham Aparesham Tvam, Bhutanam Asi Bhavavit,
Deva Deva Jagaddatar,
Deva Deva Jagadhatar,
Lokanatha Shikamane,
Lokanatha Shikamane,
Pareshama Paresham Tvam,
Pareshama Paresham Tvam,
Anamasi Bhavali,
Bhutanam Asi Bhavavit,
Deva Deva Jagaddatar,
Deva Deva Jagadhatur,
Lokanatha Shikamane,
Lokanatha Shikamane,
Paresham Paresham
Paresham
Tvam,
Aparesham Tvam,
Bhutanamasi Bhavali,
Bhutanam Asi Bhavavit,
Deva Deva Jagaddatar,
Deva Deva Jagaddatur,
Lokanatha Shikamane,
Lokanatha Shikamane, Paresham Aparesham Tvam,
Bhutanamasi Bhavali,
Bhutanam Asi Bhavavit. Ladies? Deva Deva Jagaddatur, Lokanatha Shikamane, Paresham Aparesham Tvam, Bhutanam Asi Bhavavit, Deva Deva, O God of the demigods, Jagatataha, O sustainer of the universe, Lokanatha Shikamane, O head jewel of all demigods in other planets, Paresham of the spiritual world, Aparesham of the material world, Tvam, you, Bhutanam of all living entities, Asi, are, Bhavavit, knowing the intentions. O God of the demigods, sustainer of the universe, head jewel of all the demigods and other planets, you know the intentions of all living entities in both the spiritual and material worlds. Responsibly. O God of the demigods, sustainer of the universe, head jewel of all the demigods and other planets, you know the intentions of all living entities in both the spiritual and material worlds. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Because Brahma is almost on an equal footing with the personality of Godhead, he is addressed here as the God of the demigods. And because he is the secondary creator of the universe, he is addressed as the sustainer of the universe. He is the head of all demigods, and therefore he is addressed here as the head jewel of the demigods. It is not difficult for him to understand everything which is happening in both spiritual and material worlds. He knows everyone's heart and everyone's intentions. Therefore, he was requested to explain this incident. Why was the pregnancy of Diti causing such anxieties all over the universe? The verse again. O God of the demigods, sustainer of the universe, head jewel of all the demigods and other planets, you know the intentions of all living entities in both the spiritual and material worlds. The indication is that Brahma is almost equal to the personality of Godhead. He can read, in effect, read the minds of everyone. It's kind of a fanciful idea that a person can read another person's mind without seeing it or hearing it. But Lord Brahma has the ability to read other people's minds, and he knows, as it is said in the verse, he knows what is going on in everyone's mind, all over the universe, all over the material and the spiritual universe as well. So he's not an ordinary person. Once Prabhupada gave the example of a judge, saying that the lawyers or advocates were arguing back and forth over the innocence or guilt of the accused, and the judge was starting to nod out. And at a certain point, his secretary, or the person who was recording the whole incident, made a gesture to the judge, your honor, or your worship as they call them in England, your honor, you're starting to go to sleep. And he said, I have already made my judgment. So even though he was just sitting on the bench, he was using his intelligence to determine the guilt or innocence of the subject who was being accused of a crime. So some people have this ability to read minds, and they have a high intelligence. Sometimes the judge is criticized as just sitting and getting a very high salary, whereas other people are working very hard day and night, hours a day, and many days a week, and they're not getting nearly the amount of salary that the judge gets just from sitting. So the idea is that a Brahmin, or a person who is using the mind, is superior to an everyday worker, even in intelligence. And because he has a greater intelligence, he can just sit, and he is given that high position to sit and make judgments on people. So he's considered to be a highly intelligent person. And therefore, Lord Brahma is addressed as the god of the demigods. Even he knows what the demigods are thinking. They're obviously in a higher planetary system, but Brahma's superior intelligence enables him to know what they are even thinking. So the philosophy of Krishna consciousness is a little too complex for beginners to understand. How can a great devotee like Dviti give birth to a demon? And how can a demon later on be resumed in his position in the spiritual world? Like Jaya and Vijaya were gatekeepers of Vaikuntha. So they had a spiritual identity. So sometimes a demon can become a devotee. Sometimes a devotee can become a demon. These are some of the mysterious and inscrutable concepts that Krishna consciousness philosophy embraces. It's very difficult for people to understand. Prabhupada has told us that Lord Chaitanya and his pastimes and intimate Krishna Leelas were not discussed openly or publicly. With just a very few people, Prabhupada discussed these intimate pastimes of Radha and Krishna, the Vrindavan pastimes, how Krishna can take birth and act as an ordinary person, can cry real tears, can be afraid of his stick of Mother Yashoda, and all these things. They're too intimate for people to understand. So with people like Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and who eventually became a devotee, he could discuss intimate pastimes, and there were only a few people. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, Ramananda Roy, Shiki Mahiti, and Shukadeva Goswami, although they were impersonalists in the beginning, they became Vaishnavas in the end. And they became very learned people. So this philosophy is so complex that people like Prakasananda Saraswati weren't given access to them. Lord Chaitanya only discussed Vedanta philosophy with the likes of those people. So they were very great people, but at the same time, because they were impersonalists, and there's been a long, thousands of years debate between impersonalists and personalists going on for a very long time. So speaking of judges, I'm going to read something that was written in 1977 by a devotee who has a bit of a flair for writing named Sakshi Gopal. This report was sent to Srila Prabhupada in 1977 when Prabhupada was very ill and he was almost departing. He was in Vrindavan at the time, or someplace in the world, and he was ailing, very, very unfortunate, very sick. So this letter was written to him. This is what it said. Next morning, this took place in a courtroom, a place called Marlborough Court. The police used to harass the devotees. I was one of them, and for chanting in the street. And they charged devotees sometimes with street obstruction because they couldn't think of anything else to charge them with. So this is what Shakshi wrote. Next morning in the court, we pleaded not guilty to the charges laid against us. Our men were doing Nagar Sankirtan, so some constable, police officer, said, "You are blocking the footpath with your Nagar Sankirtan, and I must arrest you." So they were taken to court. The next morning in court, we pleaded not guilty to the charges laid against us. The judge, therefore, deferred our case to a later time, the 2nd of February, 1977. The 2nd of February at 2 p.m. It was not until the day before the hearing that we realized the actual significance of the appointment. The 2nd day of February was the appearance day of Lord Nityananda Prabhu. After ending a morning of fasting and chanting with a blissful arti and a splendid prasadam, we set off for the great Marlborough Street Magistrates Court in a confident mood, sure that Lord Nityananda would protect us. I personally visited this court in Marlborough Court on several occasions when we were charged with obstructing the foot traffic, and somehow or other, and sometimes we were fined, sometimes the case was postponed. We set off for the great Marlborough Street Magistrates Court in a confident mood, sure that Lord Nityananda would protect us. We were accompanied by a new and enthusiastic visitor, the Reverend Norman Morehouse, second only to the Bishop of Norwich, who came to observe the proceedings. Hearing this report, Prabhupada was very impressed. Sakshi wrote on, "We arrived at the courthouse and waited in the big hallway while the Reverend went through to the public gallery. The plainclothesman who arrested us soon turned up, now dressed in uniform. It took a little persuasion before they cautiously took some of Lord Nityananda's prasada in the form of cookies while we waited for our case to come up. At last we were beckoned into the courthouse itself and ushered into the dock. A stir went around the assembly in the court. Shaven heads and saffron robes were the last thing anyone expected to see in Her Majesty's court on a Tuesday afternoon. The magistrate, a balding, portly man in his late middle age, a red nose in his dark gray suit, surveyed us over the top of his gold-rimmed spectacles. We affirmed our plea of not guilty to the clerk of the court, and one of the constables, who was sworn in at the witness box, proceeded to report the supposed conditions of our arrest. The actual number of the chanting Nagar Sirkan party miraculously grew from the original 5, first of all, to 7 when he started his account, and later to 8 persons when he described how 3 devotees ran off and escaped arrest. According to his description, it seemed that many more people had been using Oxford Street than we had been aware of. Indeed, unlimited numbers of pedestrians had been obstructed and forced into the road at the grave risk of being run over by the almost non-existent traffic. The judge listened impartially, and then, since we had no advocate to speak on our behalf, he asked us if we would like to cross-examine the evidence of the policeman. When we humbly pointed out that the constable, like everyone else, had imperfect senses, that he had contradicted himself in assessing the actual number of devotees, the judge politely suggested it was a mathematical error. A titter of laughter rippled around the courtroom at his remark, while the police constable shuffled his feet and looked embarrassed. We were asked if we ourselves would like to speak for our defense. So, having been previously chosen as a spokesman, I volunteered to be sworn in at the witness box. Surprised when the usher asked me to hold a copy of Bhagavad Gita in my right hand, I read out the words of the card presented before me. I swear by Almighty Sri Krishna that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Encouraged by smiles from the devotees in the dock, I began to describe the circumstances of our arrest, this time as they actually had happened. The magistrate listened as I went on to say, "We understand that the police have a duty to perform, sir. But we also have a duty. We have been instructed by our spiritual master. Indeed, we are instructed by all the principal scriptures of the world, the Quran, the Torah, the Bible, and in the Vedas, that we should glorify God by chanting His holy names. Whether you know the Lord by the name of Allah, Jehovah, Rama, Govinda, or Krishna, God is one." "Oh, quite so, affirmed the magistrate. Encouraged, I went on. "It is said in the Vedic scriptures, in the Brihat Naradiya Puranam, Hare Nama, Eva Kevalam." In English, what does it mean? In English, the magistrate asked. "Kalo nastieva gatir anyata." This is written in the Sanskrit language 5,000 years ago. It means, in the age of Kali, the present age of materialism and quarrel, there is no alternative for making positive spiritual advancement, but the chanting of the holy name, the holy name, the holy name of the Lord. The judge, in fact, the whole courtroom, sat there fascinated. I remembered Srila Prabhupada's introduction to the Srimad Bhagavatam, and I began to speak further. Although mankind has made many great advancements in so many spheres, we can factually say that there is a fault in the social body at large. People are not happy with their day-to-day activities, and there is an increasing disturbance of drug addiction, prostitution, violence, and crime. The root of the problem is lack of consciousness. People are unaware of the actual purpose of life. The judge, intrigued by this sound philosophy coming from the witness box, relaxed his judicial appearance, sat back, and took a sip of water from his glass. Encouraged, I asked, "Your Honor, with your permission, I would like to read a short passage which appeared in the London Observer," that's a newspaper, in October 1972. It is an excerpt from an article written by the eminent English historian Sir Arnold Toynbee. Just for your information, Prabhupada had a meeting with this man. He's departed by now, Sir Arnold Toynbee. It was a very interesting discussion. Toynbee wrote, "The cause of it is the world's malady is spiritual. We are suffering from having sold our souls to the pursuit of an objective which is spiritually wrong and practically unattainable. We have to consider our objective and change it. And until we do this, we shall not have peace, either amongst ourselves or within each of us." Then Sakshi continued, "As devotees of the Lord, we strictly follow 4 principles. Cultivating the qualities of human life: mercifulness, truthfulness, cleanliness, and austerity. The absence of these qualities means the degradation of society. So the spreading of spiritual understanding amongst humanity at large is the highest welfare work, and an essential part of the program is the distribution of literature and the congregational chanting in the street of the holy names of God. Is that all? Inquired the judge. Yes, sir, was the reply. Then you may step down, he instructed. Adjusting his spectacles and regarding the devotees who were once more assembled in the dock, he said in a very firm yet amicable manner, in legal terms, you are guilty of obstruction, although it is of a very minor degree. Taking this into consideration, and because of your obvious sincerity, I have decided to dismiss the case. We smiled jubilantly and, thanking the magistrate, were about to step down when Krishna prompted me to say, Sir, we were wondering if you had a court library here, in which case we would like to present a book for addition to the collection. Thank you, replied the judge. I am quite sure we can accommodate it. Giving a copy of Srila Prabhupada's Sri Upanishad to one of the clerks, who promised to pass it on to the judge, we left the courtroom, thanking Lord Nityananda for his mercy. Prabhupada liked this report very much. Just a little bit earlier, there was another report by a judge named Lehigh in New York, and it was published in the New York Times and on the front page of the Times of India. And he opened his judgment by saying the Hare Krishna movement goes back thousands of years with roots in India. And if it is not or is a bona fide religion, we have to admit with affirming, yes, it is a bona fide religion. And then Prabhupada mentioned that he thought it was going to take 10 years before acceptance. And it happened while he was still in his alive in the United States in 1977. So this report came just after that report. So there were two big victories in courts of law, one in England and one in the United States. So I'll read the verse again. O God of the demigods, sustainer of the universe, headed jewel of all the demigods in other planets, you know the intentions of all living entities in both the spiritual and material worlds. Any comments or questions on this verse or what I read or anything else? Please ask or comment at the moment. I'll give you a moment to think before.
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
So the verse says, and you mentioned that Lord Brahma knows everything in both spiritual and material world. How can we understand, how can we reconcile that when he came to Dwarka, he saw other Brahmas and he was puzzled up, he was surprised.
Well, even though has the ability to understand what is being thought of by all living entities all over the world, sometimes he has to play the role of an ordinary person. And so when he saw that there were many other Brahmas, he was a bit bewildered. But in actual fact, he wasn't bewildered because he was aware of the fact that there were many other Brahmas all over the universe, all over the vast universes that exist in the spiritual world. So sometimes even a highly elevated person like Krishna himself has to play the role of an ordinary person. Krishna cried real tears. He exhibited real fear on his mother Yashoda's stick. Even though he's so powerful that even fear personified trembles in his presence. So that's the reason. Lord Brahma does know everything, but sometimes he acts as if he doesn't. That's part of being omniscient. Any other comments or questions? So I'll read the verse again. O God of the demigods, sustainer of the universe, head a jewel of all the demigods and other planets, you know the intentions of all living entities in both the spiritual and material worlds. Okay, and we'll stop at that point. And if anyone wants to read this, I printed it out, so it's got some other details in there about who was reading and when it was being read and what Prabhupada's reactions were.
So,
But anyway, that's part of the history.
Maharaj ki